Despite challenges from the pandemic, Boston's on pace to meet goals for new housing production, goals that were pushed higher 3 years ago. In 2020, the city permitted more than 1,000 units categorized as affordable. To tell us about the supply and how it matches with housing policy is the Deputy Director for Neighborhood Housing Development in Boston's Department of Neighborhood Development, Jessica Boatright. Thank you very much for being with us, Jessica.
Thank you.
Jessica, I know the figure I mentioned was more than 1,000 units permitted that were in one way or another affordable, but how does that fit into the whole goal of Boston 2030, the goal that was originally laid out in 2014?
Well, this is a big year for us. We're really excited about the outcomes of 2020, particularly in a year that was challenging for everyone in the city and really everyone in the world. So it's 1,023 affordable units that were permitted. Another really exciting part of that is what that means is that 30% of the units permitted across the city were affordable, which is a really good number in keeping a pace, as you mentioned, with the Housing a Changing City Boston 2030 plan and the increased numbers that we set in 2018 for 69,000 overall new units across the city by 2030, 15,820 of which are meant to be affordable. We're now tracking above the predicted goal for where we should have been in 2020. So we're actually at 121% of where we want to be in terms of that overall production number, and we are 109% of where we want to be in terms of affordable production. So we're really, on track to beat that, possibly even before 2030, which is really exciting.
When I look back to last March and April, I thought 2020 was going to be a year of arrested development. What happened next?
There were a number of factors that helped us uh, be on track for such a productive year in terms of affordable housing production. I think, first and foremost, we are really lucky in the city of Boston, first of all, to have a mayor who's really championed affordable housing and focused on that pipeline, but also to have a number of partners on the public funding side, on the private funding side, and in the development community who really believe in the mayor's vision and in the mayor's goal and are helping to push for that. So it's really quite remarkable that not just the pandemic, but also for safety reasons, we had a construction shutdown for several weeks, and still these projects were able to keep moving in a really good clip. So I think there's just a really great system in place and also a really healthy pipeline.
I know there's still an ongoing debate about how much the new units help, even when they're built in outlying neighborhoods. But I know that at the origins of Boston 2030, back 7 years ago, a lot of people were afraid that we're going to see a lot of downtown high rises and some linkage money, but not so much in the neighborhoods. But along the way, this plan has been changed. And what have we seen in the neighborhoods as far as new units being added?
Well, I think every year when the city makes their funding awards for projects that they're going to support in affordable production, we, the staff, in making recommendations to the mayor and under his leadership, and also the Neighborhood Housing Trust, and now the Community Preservation Committee, the two appointed bodies that oversee some of our funds, are all really conscious about making sure that funding awards are spread out across the city. And this year, if you look at some of the projects that were permitted, I think you see that spread across the city. We have 911 of those 1,023 units are within a half mile of public transit, but there really are spread throughout. So a couple of examples are the Loop at Mattapan Station is 135 units that are actually on MBTA land directly adjacent to a commuter rail station. 25 Amory Street, which is part of the JP Rocks planning effort, is 44 new units in Jackson Square, right at the Jackson Square T station. This year was also the best year on record, especially in the last decade, for senior housing production. And excitingly, some of those projects are in places like the North End. 41 North Margin is a partnership with the Knights of Columbus that'll have 23 new units in the North End, which is a neighborhood we haven't had a chance to develop in a long time. We also have Grace Apartments in East Boston, right in Maverick Square. That's 42 new units of senior housing. And then we've also, that 1,023 units also includes a number of affordable homeownership units, which has been a consistent priority for the city throughout the Housing and Changing City Plan implementation. So a couple of examples are U Homes at 90 Antwerp Street is 20 units. It's a very sustainable project. And that's in Alston Brighton, actually on a piece of land that was formerly owned by Harvard University. So a real partnership between Harvard, the BPDA, and the city of Boston. And then Aileron Condominiums, 7 units, is also on a piece of city-owned land. That's another project that's in East Boston, and it's going to be part of an arts community that will also include some rental apartments. So those are just a few projects to give you a sample of how we really are spread out across the neighborhoods.
Well, one of the interesting projects is within a few blocks of Nubian Square in Roxbury. There's a lot of land that was made available when the old bus garage was shut down. And you had competing demands. A lot of people wanted to see affordability because of the gentrification in Roxbury, but you also had some Roxbury residents who wanted to see more home ownership. So how did the city straddle those two kinds of demands?
Well, so you're talking about Bartlett Yards, which is well
Yes.
underway, a really exciting multi-phase project that is going to include rental, home ownership, both of those at multiple income levels, as well as a fair amount of commercial space for the community. And that is a good example of a lot of what's going on in Nubian Square. The city also has a number of publicly owned parcels that were put out for proposals 2 years ago now that are also underway under a similar model. The Roxbury Strategic Master Plan requires that units developed in that area are 30% extremely low income, 30% low income, and 30% market to accommodate for that broad range of people that are really wanting and needing to live in that area. So all the projects that you see going on there involve that mix of affordability, as well as a decent amount of commercial space to really give import to the significance of developing a local commercial district and really bolstering what's there.
I know we've been concentrating on new construction, but what we're hearing more recently in the neighborhoods is that there are some units of housing, some of them in big buildings, and they're in markets that are on the upswing, and renters are very much afraid of being displaced. So what about the ability of to tap the resources in Boston's housing surge to help, keep those units affordable, maybe partnering with nonprofits? Are we seeing that already? Will we see more in the future?
Yeah, so one of the initiatives that came out of Housing Boston 2030 was the Acquisition Opportunity Program, which is a program that my department spends a lot of time on. It's a program that partners with mission-oriented developers who are interested in deed restricting units to make city resources available fairly quickly so that they can compete in a market that's full of speculative buyers and buy units and then income restrict them in perpetuity. It's been a tremendously successful program. In 2018, when the mayor released the update to the Housing Boston 2030 plan, he set a goal of acquiring 1,000 units off the private market and income restricting them. And I can't sort of overstate the importance of this program because it really is one of our most powerful tools against displacement, because what we're able to do is help people purchase units that are currently occupied to make sure that the tenants there know that they can stay for the long term. And an exciting thing about the program is that this year, as of the end of 2020, we've acquired 432 units. So we started counting in 2018. We have a goal of 1,000 by 2030, and we're almost halfway there, basically 3 years into the program, or into the counting, I should say. Also this year, we had our largest acquisition to date. We were able to partner with a mission-oriented developer and owner called Avaneth to acquire 207 units in Mattapan in a development called Morton Village. And we are very hopeful about our ability to continue to pursue those larger buildings. The majority of the purchases have been in smaller or medium-sized buildings, which each one, feels like a big win for neighborhoods and residents. But we are coordinated with other public funders, other mission-oriented funders, um, and the state to try to make sure that when larger developments come up onto the market, that we're able to work with buyers who share our mission of income restricting and protecting tenants.
Even 7 years ago, in the first version of Boston 2030, this wasn't just about letting the supply go up and have it trickle down every which way. One of the things you picked up on early, that is the city did, is that there was a workforce population and there was a shortage of housing for them because they're not the low income, high subsidy kind of population. And then you had the older population of Boston, people who were sort of locked into housing, and that tightened the supply. What about the goal of meeting that need for the workforce population? How good a job has Boston done on that so far?
I think that, with an example like Nubian Square, where we're really focused on that third, a third, a third in terms of different affordability levels, you see some modeling out of meeting the really high demand for extremely low income units and those workforce units. We've also focused on it in our homeownership program. One of the one of the initiatives that we have been working on is the neighborhood homes initiative, where we've taken smaller parcels of city-owned land that don't make sense for larger developments, but are really great neighborhood scale opportunities for home ownership, and tried to engage newer developers, smaller local developers largely, in creating a workforce of home ownership units for first-time home buyers, many of whom would fit in that workforce housing category. So we're looking at it on the rental side, and we also focus on it a lot on the home ownership side through the development work that we're doing and through the Boston Home Center.
Finally, Jessica, we don't want to get into too much detail on where exactly to go, but you've got a lot of information at D&D about what's going on with housing. So if people want to check that out, what's the best way for them to at least get fairly close to it?
Um, I think that, the best thing to do is always to go to the city's website, um, the Department of Neighborhood Development website. We also are building out and about to relaunch our building housing website, which is a website that allows residents to go directly into neighborhoods and see what kind of projects are going on there. So you can link to that through the city website, and of course, all of our phone and email contact information is there as well.
Well, thank you very much for taking the time and explaining how that all works.
Thank you.
Jessica Boatright from the Department of Neighborhood Development. We'll have more news in just a moment.